Chapter 16 of Camille. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Camille by Alexandre Dumas. Fees. Translated by Edmund Gosse. Chapter 16. I might have told you of the beginning of this liaison in a few lines, but I wanted you to see every step by which we came, I to agree to whatever Marguerite wished, Marguerite to be unable to live apart from me. It was the day after the evening when she came to see me that I sent her Manon Lescaut. From that time, seeing that I could not change my mistress's life, I changed my own. I wished above all not to leave myself time to think over the position I had accepted, for, in spite of myself, it was a great distress to me. Thus my life, generally so calm, assumed all at once an appearance of noise and disorder. Never believe, however disinterested the love of a kept woman may be, that it will cost one nothing. Nothing is so expensive as their caprices, flowers, boxes at the theatre, suppers, days in the country, which one can never refuse to one's mistress. As I have told you, I had little money. My father was, and still is, Receiver General at sea. He has a great reputation there for loyalty, thanks to which he was able to find the security which he needed in order to attain this position. It is worth 40,000 francs a year, and during the 10 years that he has had it, he has paid off the security, and put aside a dowry for my sister. My father is the most honorable man in the world. When my mother died, she left 6,000 francs a year, which he divided between my sister and myself on the very day when he received his appointment. Then, when I was 21, he added to this little income an annual allowance of 5,000 francs, assuring me that with 8,000 francs a year I might live very happily at Paris, if, in addition to this, I would make a position for myself either in law or medicine. I came to Paris, studied law, was called to the bar, and, like many other young men, put my diploma in my pocket, and let myself drift, as one so easily does in Paris. My expenses were very moderate, only I used up my year's income in 8 months, and spent the 4 summer months with my father, which practically gave me 12,000 francs a year, and, in addition, the reputation of a good son. For the rest, not a penny of debt. This, then, was my position when I made the acquaintance of Marguerite. You can well understand that, in spite of myself, my expenses soon increased. Marguerite's nature was very capricious, and, like so many women, she never regarded as a serious expense those 1,001 distractions which made up her life. So, wishing to spend as much time with me as possible, she would write to me in the morning that she would dine with me, not at home, but at some restaurant in Paris, or in the country. I would call for her, and we would dine and go on to the theatre, often having supper as well, and by the end of the evening I had spent 4 or 5 louis, which came to 2,000 or 3,000 francs a month, which reduced my year to 3 months and a half, and made it necessary for me either to go into debt or to leave Marguerite. I would have consented to anything except the latter. Forgive me if I give you all these details, but you will see that they were the cause of what was to follow. What I tell you is a true and simple story, and I leave to it all the naivete of its details, and all the simplicity of its developments. I realized then that as nothing in the world would make me forget my mistress, it was needful for me to find some way of meeting the expenses into which she drew me. Then, too, my love for her had so disturbing an influence upon me that every moment I spent away from Marguerite was like a year, and that I felt the need of consuming these moments in the fire of some sort of passion, and living them so swiftly as not to know that I was living them. I began by borrowing 5,000 or 6,000 francs on my little capital, and with this I took to gambling. Since gambling houses were destroyed, gambling goes on everywhere. Formerly, when one went to Frascati, one had the chance of making a fortune, one played against money, and if one lost, there was always the consolation of saying that one might have gained. Whereas now, except in the clubs, where there is still a certain rigor in regard to payments, one is almost certain, the moment one gains a considerable sum, not to receive it. You will readily understand why. Gambling is only likely to be carried on by young people very much in need of money and not possessing the fortune necessary for supporting the life they lead. They gamble then, and with this result, or else they gain, and then those who lose serve to pay for their horses and mistresses, which is very disagreeable. Debts are contracted, acquaintances begun about a green table end by quarrels in which life or honor comes to grief, and though one may be an honest man, one finds oneself ruined by very honest men, whose only defect is that they have not 200,000 francs a year. I need not tell you of those who cheat at play, and how one hears one fine day of their hasty disappearance and tardy condemnation. I flung myself into this rapid, noisy, and volcanic life, which had formerly terrified me when I thought of it, and which had become for me the necessary complement of my love for Marguerite. What else could I have done? The nights that I did not spend in the Rue d'Antin, if I had spent them alone in my own room, I could not have slept. Jealousy would have kept me awake, and inflamed my blood and my thoughts, while gambling gave a new turn to the fever which would otherwise have preyed upon my heart, and fixed it upon a passion which laid hold on me in spite of myself, until the hour struck when I might go to my mistress. Then, and by this I knew the violence of my love, I left the table without a moment's hesitation, whether I was winning or losing, pitying those whom I left behind because they would not, like me, find their real happiness in leaving it. For the most of them, gambling was a necessity. For me, it was a remedy. Free of Marguerite, I should have been free of gambling. Thus, in the midst of all that, I preserved a considerable amount of self-possession. I lost only what I was able to pay, and gained only what I should have been able to lose. For the rest, chance was on my side. I made no debts, and I spent 3 times as much money as when I did not gamble. It was impossible to resist an existence which gave me an easy means of satisfying the 1,000 caprices of Marguerite. As for her, she continued to love me as much, or even more than ever. As I told you, I began by being allowed to stay only from midnight to 6 o'clock. Then I was asked sometimes to a box in the theatre. Then she sometimes came to dine with me. One morning I did not go till 8, and there came a day when I did not go till 12. But, sooner than the moral metamorphosis, a physical metamorphosis came about in Marguerite. I had taken her cure in hand, and the poor girl, seeing my aim, obeyed me in order to prove her gratitude. I had succeeded without effort or trouble in almost isolating her from her former habits. My doctor, whom I had made her meet, had told me that only rest and calm could preserve her health, so that in place of supper and sleepless nights, I succeeded in substituting a hygienic regime and regular sleep. In spite of herself, Marguerite got accustomed to this new existence, whose salutary effects she already realized. She began to spend some of her evenings at home, or, if the weather was fine, she wrapped herself in a shawl, put on a veil, and we went on foot, like 2 children, in the dim alleys of the Champs-Élysées. She would come in tired, take a light supper, and go to bed after a little music or reading, which she had never been used to do. The cough, which every time I heard it seemed to go through my chest, had almost completely disappeared. At the end of 6 weeks the Count was entirely given up, and only the Duke obliged me to conceal my liaison with Marguerite, and even he was sent away when I was there, under the pretext that she was asleep, and had given orders that she was not to be awakened. The habit or the need of seeing me which Marguerite had now contracted had this good result, that it forced me to leave the gaming table just at the moment when an adroit gambler would have left it. Settling one thing against another, I found myself in possession of some